For those of you who don't know, and maybe a lot of you are too young to know, but growing up, the fittest human being on the planet, the fittest human beings on the planet were the people who performed in what is called the Ironman. It's a race in Hawaii. It was basically it was tantamount to being a Navy SEAL as a civilian. As kids, it was on TV. It was at like on ABC News, ABC Wild World of Sports, stuff like that. And our TVs only had like 3 to 12 stations. And when this thing would come on, it was nuts. And it was basically dudes and chicks jumping in a water and swimming, and then I think they would ride the bike, and then they would run. And this thing was crazy. I'm assuming Iron Man's still huge, right? They just had a like
Hmm.
a version of it in Santa Cruz, California, but the
Yep.
one in Hawaii was the one that got all the TV time then. And TV time then was so precious and valuable. It's not like now where Sarah Sigmund's daughter can put something on her Instagram that's more popular than Fox News and CNN combined. But and Chris, who we're all staring at right now on our computers, and this is pre computers even. I mean, legitimate computers. In 1985, Chris did this race in 9 hours and 16 minutes and 40 seconds. He took
Wow.
second. He took second place, and it would be hard to find someone alive back then who wouldn't say that's the second fittest man alive. And that's pretty remarkable. In 1982, I was 13 years old. Um, it was kind of like the biggest thing on like sporting thing on TV in that way. It was the CrossFit of its day. Did you agree with me, Chris? I mean, I'm telling you like perspective of a California boy, but and
It
with no
was. I mean,
hyperbole, with no hyperbole.
it was three sports, and so there were tougher events. In my opinion, the Tour de France is significantly more challenging, difficult on every level. But combining three different disciplines created a training predicament, and it had not been done. The original philosophy, like you said, it was really created in Oahu by a bunch of people in the military. And it was more of like these guys were sitting in a bar one night and they were like, can you top this? Can you top this? What about doing this? And what they did is they came up with this, let's combine the three well-known endurance events on Oahu, which was the Waikiki Rough Water Swim, it was the Around the Oahu Bike Ride, and then it was the Honolulu Marathon. And so they got up the next morning and went for it. And these guys were big. The philosophy was back then that you had to be big in order to survive that duration. And then the era that I was in, the mid 80s, going into the early 90s, was changing that philosophy where it was in order to be good in a long time domain, you had to have a certain physiology. You had to be a slow twitch, high aerobic capacity, right? VO2 max, to sustain the speeds in order to place well. And so my body type was unusual when I got in. Matter of fact, I'll never forget a race that I did in 1983. It was in Livermore, and I was on the start of the swim. And I come from a swimming background.
Home of
And
CrossFit Livermore, by the way, Matt Souza's gym, the executive producer of the show. Sorry, go on.
there you go. So I was in a Lake Del Val, and I getting ready to start a 1.5 kilometer swim, and there and all of a sudden I hear this, and I was on the front line in the swim just because I'm a swimmer. But keep in mind, I was about 130 pounds.
Oh, you broke up a little
Old,
bit there, Chris. Start
uh,
back. You were 130 pounds. How tall?
5'10",
Okay.
and I I hadn't yet matured. I hadn't yet matured and gotten into an adult body, and there was a guy behind me, and all of a sudden I hear this, "Hey, little kid, you don't get out of my way, I'm going to run you down." And I was so intimidated in that moment because, let's face it, I was 19 and I knew I was small and I was super insecure. And I was just about to cower back and quit. And the world champion at that time was a guy by the name of Scott Molina. And I had already gone to Hawaii and competed the first time, and I was top 2 or something out of the water. And the world champion, Scott Molina, turns to this guy and says, "That's Chris Hinshaw. I think he can handle himself." I had no idea world champion knew who I was. And that resonated with me. I mean, I carried that comment and the impact that he had on me, and it changed the trajectory of my life because he stuck up for me. And yeah, that was really the beginning of what started an amazing run.
Could you also say he believed in you?
I think that he is just a student of the game. One of the things that I learned way back when was world champions, they're constantly in a quest of wanting to learn and converting that information into knowledge, because that's what's making them confident. And they want to know the battlefield. They want to know who is on that battlefield. And they assess everybody because they want to win. They want to dominate. And they're not just followers, they're leaders. And that's what leaders do. They're out in front of everybody else innovating. And that's what Scott Molina did. He knew me because maybe sometime down the road, I might be a threat. Maybe.
He could have not said anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it says something about who he was as a man. I mean, there's many people that sit there passively. And I'm grateful for what he did. You know, there's been a few people like that throughout my life that stuck up for me when I needed that. Because, and especially as you get into middle ages, there's no difference between somebody, you know, in their 40s and someone who's in their teenage years. They have these insecurities. Just adults hide them a little better.